You know, lately I've been hearing a lot of talk about a certain little budget video card. Anytime budget GPU is brought up, it seems like people are pretty quick to mention the GTX 1050 Ti. But what about the used market, I ask? Which is met with a lot of buzzwords, speculation, rumor, and just plain ignorance of youth. Yes, Old Man Aztec is here, you little shits. You're wrong about the 1050 Ti being the best budget GPU, and I can prove it. So today I've gathered together a wide variety of old graphics cards. Some are old dual GPU enthusiast cards that would have run you about $700 back in the day but are much cheaper now, and some are just old flagship cards like the HD 7970. The point is, they're all pretty cheap and within the price range of the 1050 Ti. And in my opinion, they offer more bang for the buck than the 1050 Ti can ever hope to. Now, before we get started, there are a few things I should note. The first being that I acquired most of these cards during the mining craze, and the prices I paid for them have likely changed. Secondly, most of the games here are being tested at medium settings, since this is a budget-oriented test. The system used, it included an i5 3470 and 8 gigs of DDR3 memory. The one exception to the medium settings rule is GTA 5, and that's mostly due to the fact that on very high or normal settings, the CPU became the limiting factor and all these GPUs could just breeze through the game. So GTA 5 was actually tested with the ultra settings, though I left some of the advanced settings left out. And honestly, you're probably going to see some pretty poor performance there since this is being tested on ultra. And VRAM is a very, very limiting factor for some of these cards. As for the cards themselves, I have gathered 6 from both the green team and the red team. Representing Team Green, we have the GTX 480, the GTX 590, the GTX 680, the GTX 780, and the GTX 780 Ti, along with the GTX 1050 Ti. For Team Red, we have the HD 5970, the HD 6990, HD 7970, R9290, R9290X, and the bastard child budget card from AMD's current GPU generation, the RX 560. Nearly every card was overclocked to the maximum stable clock speeds that I could achieve, the exceptions being the GTX 590 and the R9290. The 590 I actually had to underclock by 10 MHz on both the core and the memory just to keep it stable. The 290 just refused to go beyond its factory overclock of 1000 MHz. With all of that out of the way, let's see how the 1050 Ti, along with the RX 560, hold up against these old beastly graphics cards. You can kind of see a pattern here. It becomes very apparent very quickly that the 1050 Ti just can't match the raw performance of the 780 Ti 290 or the 290X. It competes well with the 680 and the 7970, virtually tying them in most games. But what about performance per dollar? Well, let's take a look at that. Here, the 1050 Ti, it just doesn't have a leg to stand on. In terms of frames per dollar, it gets beaten by or ties cards that either match its raw performance or walk all over its face and steal its lunch money. It does manage to actually tie the 290X's performance per dollar, but again, raw performance is far better with that card. So, some final thoughts. I realize that the GTX 480 kills it here in terms of value per dollar, at least at these settings and for the price that I got the card, but I would never recommend it over the 1050 Ti unless you're absolutely desperate. The architecture is ancient, and the lack of VRAM means it's already on borrowed time. For 1080p medium settings, at this point in time, I would crown the GTX 680 as the performance per dollar budget king. Though, if you want something with a little more staying power, and you have more money to spend, just pick up a 780 Ti, or R9 290. They're all within the price range of the 1050 Ti, and they crush its performance. Do yourself a favor and don't automatically assume that just because something is new, that it's automatically better than what came before. Give the used market a shot. Shop smart, get good deals, you won't be disappointed. Oh, and before I go, I know there's some wonky results in these benchmarks. I did do multiple runs for each bench with each card, and I got the same results. I think some of the strange lower-end results were due to shoddy SLI and crossfire support on some of these really old dual GPU cards. But honestly, if I could do it all over again, I would ditch these dual GPU cards for their single GPU counterparts. Like, I would swap out the 5970 for a 5870, etc., etc. Anyway, guys, this is my first time attempting anything of this scope or this amount of depth, so please be gentle. I'll catch you later.